Good afternoon. Welcome back. And I'm pleased today with us, we have Carmen Delgado Votaw, who's going to talk to us a little bit about her very long history in working with gender equity issues, the feminist, and a lot of the global feminist issues. Welcome, Carmen.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Where would you like to start? Because you have such an important history working with feminist programs and activities. What's probably your high points, or how did you get started in this?
Well, I got started in the 60s after I came back from Iran, where I had been for 2 years, following my husband, who was with the Harvard Advisory Group, advising the Shah of Iran with 14 other advisors from different parts of the world about how to do their development plan.
Wow, that'll be exciting.
And that was very exciting to me. I had never seen snow. I had gone from my native Puerto Rico into a very different culture, and
The Middle East is quite different, even today.
opportunities for women and so on. So I decided that I would really look into certain things that really seemed to me very different from ours. Why do women wear chador, cover themselves? Why do
Maybe in the cultural reasons.
Why do women have to ask permission to travel, to do anything, basically? Why do men control what happens to children? And also, what happens to homeless children?
Was that your experience in Puerto Rico before you came to the States or moved on?
No, in Puerto Rico I came from a very small town in the island, which is very small itself, 100 by 35 miles. And my little town was a microcosm of what I think people mean when they say it takes a village.
Oh, nice.
To raise a child.
You were raised well in that
So
village,
that town gave me my identity, gave me my desire to know the world, gave me a sense of belonging that is very hard to duplicate anywhere else. When I go to Puerto Rico and go to my hometown, everybody says, Carmencita, I remember you when you were 5.
Oh, nice. So you had strong roots
Yes.
in terms of your independence and your
Yes.
wanderlust of travel and.
And in Puerto Rico, we have an Equal Rights Amendment in our Constitution, so there were lots of women in business, in the legislature. We've even had a woman governor.
So you're head of the states in some areas, yeah.
3 women members of our Supreme Court. So when I went to Iran, I did have a very good version for myself of what women should be doing. My husband was very supportive. So what I did was I coalesced with a group of foreign women who were in Iran, and we looked at the orphanages, what was happening in the orphanages.
Were they mostly Iranian children, or they?
Iranian children.
Oh,
Iranian children. So we would go to the orphanages and play with the children there, read books and so on. And then we started asking for permission to take them to our homes.
Oh.
We used to have very excellent homes with swimming pools and so on. So we would take a group of children to our houses for a day. And that led us, particularly British lady and myself, to think that children should be allowed to be adopted. Of course, the regime did not want that to happen. So we started little by little going to meet with the mullahs. We met with people in the plan organization, which was the one that was doing the development plan. And eventually, a law was passed saying that children in Iran could be adopted if you signed a commitment to bring them in the Muslim faith. That was one incredible way for me to start my real commitment to advocacy. Because I said, if we can do this here, we can do a lot of things everywhere else to improve women's lives.
So describe a little bit more the lesson learned about how to be an advocate while you were doing that with the children that were in foster care. What were some of the other advocacy skills you learned at that time?
Well, at that time, I discovered that you have to be prepared when you go to ask for something. You need to know what you want to do, how you want to do it, who do you want to do it with,
Right.
and what are the benefits that will come out of doing that particular action. And so, to me, doing advocacy is really like brushing your teeth every day.
Yeah.
The more you do it, the more you understand how to do it, how to create relationships, how to cultivate people that may not be your friends or your allies right now, but that people that you can convince to your point of view.
And I've seen you do that in action recently, and that's been a few years ago that you started, so you're still applying those skills today.
Absolutely. It's a skill that never disappears. But the other skills, persistence is very important.
That's a tough one.
I'm
That's
a
a good
very impatient person, so it cost me a lot to learn that persistence. Today, you might ask a member of Congress to help you on something, and they will say no, but you have to do it gracefully, so that tomorrow you can come and ask about a different issue that they might agree with you on.
So no does not mean anything to you, it just
Yeah.
means maybe not today.
Right.
Today is no, but maybe not tomorrow.
Definitely. And you keep honing your message so that the message reaches the appropriate people at the appropriate time, because timing is key in advocacy.
Everything, right.
You have to know exactly when people are approachable, what would make them change their point of view if they're not with you. And also, you have to engage in them if they are opponents in trying to figure out why they oppose what you're trying to get through. So that was a lesson that was certainly very important in Iran, but it was doubly important in the U.S. Congress, where you know that a law can take 10 years, 20 years, and you're
persistence
still
again,
talking about the same issue many years after. But we have been very, very helpful in creating coalitions that actually help not only in, let's say, Title IX of the Education Amendments, which promotes the participation of women and girls in science, mathematics, sports,
All the STEM
engineering,
areas and
all those things where they've been barred mostly. And then it also translates into looking at other areas. You know, why are women assaulted with sexual violence in the campuses of our universities? Why are women not given a shot at the important leadership positions in all kinds of businesses, enterprises?
Why is doors not opened, right? You were talking more about some of the lessons learned. I think, what were some of the lessons learned that you learned while you were working with some of the UN advocacy activities that you were involved in?
My exposure to the UN really started with my volunteering with the League of Women Voters on explaining more what the UN does and how it can be helpful to women. In '64, we didn't know that there would be a decade for women.
Right.
But that decade for women was a lifesaver. It was so important because each country was mobilized to think how women were treated in their societies,
yes.
how far they had advanced, how far they were behind, what was needed in terms of the possible advancement of women. So in '75, when the first World Conference on Women happened in Mexico City, one of the most sexist societies in the world, Mexico City really exposed some of the foibles of government and so on. For instance, they had a delegation to a women's conference, the first United Nations World Conference on Women, and there the head of delegation from Mexico was a man.
Oh, surprise, surprise.
And so was the head of delegation of the United States.
Oh, really? Who was
Yes.
that? I've forgotten.
So that was really a light bulb telling
It's
us
in your face, so you
that
can
we
see it,
needed
right?
to really do something about this. But what the United Nations decade did was it made all the United Nations agencies and all the national agencies really study the situation of women, get statistics that didn't exist, look for ways in which they could measure the women's advancment
What
in
kind of
jobs and
categories?
so on.
We're looking at
Yes.
jobs, obviously, but
It
what
was-
other categories?
It was
were there?
education, employment, and peace.
And peace.
And peace.
Social justice or safety was not in there yet,
No.
but, okay.
No. Those were topics that were subsumed, but the main topics were really education, employment, and peace. And you remember the
Yeah, I had the
the
button.
very nice symbol of the decade. It was a dove of peace with the sign of equality and the sign of women. And that really was a catalyst for women themselves to improve their organizations, to look for ways in which they could advocate for themselves and for others. And also remember that in '75, we didn't have iPads and iPods and all those things
Yeah, different
to
communication thing,
communicate.
right.
So it was very hard to come to Mexico City and know who was doing what
Oh, I see.
in the non-governmental organizations and who was doing what in the official conference. So by the time we got to Copenhagen in 1980, women had honed their skills about coalescing with each other. There were women who were there to advocate for day workers.
You had a network for women, international
Yeah,
network.
the
by then,
network
too. Yeah.
really became alive. The network really called for people to come from different places to talk about the bad things that had happened to women through history, like the Japanese women who
Yes.
were comfort women during the war. All those issues were brought to light. By 1985, when the World Conference was held in Kenya, we were again honing on how the women progress in terms of economic development in general, and what can governments do to help them
Facilitate that.
be, because the women do most of the work in agriculture, and they do most of the work in the home, and they are not considered for Social Security
Right.
for those contributions.
Or any other benefits in many cases,
So,
right?
no other benefits. So, the agenda kept getting richer, more strong by regional categories.
Is it by continent or by?
Yes.
Got it.
And then those of us who went to all the conference, and the last one was in Beijing, China, all of us learned a lot of strategies for how to collaborate with the women of certain regions that wanted to do a particular issue.
To take
Or
into consideration
highlighted.
their
Yes.
cultural, the best cultural approach, or is that what you're saying when you talk about?
Yes.
Yes, got it.
And also say when you needed help. For instance, when the Japanese women did a big demonstration about the comfort women, we all knew where they would be at 4 o'clock on a particular day. And we all came to support that. When the women from the Nordic regions wanted to demonstrate how strong they are and how well they do, let's say, logging. We saw the Amazons from Sweden cutting out logs, and
That's a tough career.
the little Chinese men were absolutely fascinated seeing these women. We saw other women who brought jazz orchestras, all kinds of experimentation with how you demonstrate that women are in all the places
All
they
aspects.
could be, or in all the places they are interested in being. And I organized workshops in all the conferences, and my workshops were inevitably in gender equity. They were in China. We had a couple of spies that came to see what we were talking about, and I had a woman from Africa, a woman from Latin America, and a woman from the United States on my panel. And I started with the one from the Nordic regions, and she started talking about sex education. The Chinese little spies were a little bit nonplussed about that.
Did they stay or did they walk out?
They stayed, but they obviously were not behaving very nicely. So I asked them, do you have any comments on this? Oh, that would not be allowed in our country. We wouldn't be able to do that. But after that, they felt, I gave them the opportunity to say their view. So they tolerated the rest of the, I thought they would confiscate my tape I had taken, but they didn't. At any rate, what happened after that decade was that when we came to China, we had a sense of really how the world balanced its support for women or its lack of support for women, and how they tried to justify that. There was a lot more communication with all the among the non-governmentals and the people who came for the official conferences, and everybody was really looking for things that elevate the spirit, to say to women, you matter.
Go back to the persistence thing. I'm hearing
Your
again.
future is intrinsically tied to the future of the universe. So if your capacity to contribute to your societies is not recognized and urged and encouraged and nurtured, we're all going to be suffering from it. And so the message was very strong that women are not going to disappear from the map. We are more than the men, always larger numbers. And we're there with that persistence that the circumstances we have lived have really taught us to cultivate. Apart from that, my experiences as a career woman, I was the first Latina in the U.S. Congress to be a chief of staff or a member of Congress. And being in a position as a petitioner to the Congress was one thing. You learn from those that are out there doing something useful. In the more recent lifetime, I love Gloria Steinem. I think Gloria Steinem has been one of my points north person. She always says, do an outrageous thing every day.
Every day.
And I've been trying to follow her example. Bella Abzug was a great tactician, and I had a lot of respect for her. She was a little bit harsh for my kind of taste, but she pushed things forward in very vivid and very important ways. And I've had so many other mentors who have been males, and have really helped me also advance my career, or given me opportunities to travel around the world. So you have to get the nourishment from wherever you can find it. When I was a little child, I was very fortunate to have two kind of great-grandmothers of mine who had been outstanding figures in my small town. One of them, Titi Coco, used to get on a horse and go to the countryside for political meetings.
Oh, so that's where you got your start.
And to me, that was with her starched dress, riding side saddle.
Side saddle,
I thought that was fabulous. And then the other one was just the spirit of grow up strong, never be afraid of making mistakes, and you can always correct them. She would help me kind of go over things that she didn't think were proper for me to do, but she never said you can't do it. And
So she's guiding you along the way.
yes, just as opposed to my father, who once tied me up with a rope when I was trying to swim too far out in the sea. Being a junior high schooler, tied with a rope was not too good. But at any rate, my town helped me with the sense of identity. And then all the organizations that I participated in, the Girl Scouts, the Junior Red Cross, other organizations that were purely local, like Little Leagues and so on, they helped me frame my capacity to be a good player with other
Team player of
people.
other organizations.
And certainly the Girl Scouts gave me a lot of leadership tips about how to make good things in the neighborhood. We used to go visit the girls in who were deaf and dumb, and help them also participate in the outdoors and things like that. That also led me to my high school days, where I was the editor of the yearbook. I was
Many interests,
yes,
lots of interests.
many activities where a participation of a woman, a girl, was sometimes admitted with a lukewarm kind of
We're still
way.
new. Yeah.
But all those, I took advantage of those opportunities. And to this day, the participation in organizations for me has been a lifeline, because that's how I learn. That's how I figure out all the things that I know nothing about, to at least know who's the expert on those things.
Who to go to.
I'm one of the few women accepted in the Council on Foreign Relations. I am also a very great supporter of the United Nations Association, and I continue to do international, national, and local, because that's how you prove your mettle. what you're doing for my county, for instance, Montgomery County. I'm on the advisory committee of the county executive. Is good for other counties.
What is it, think locally and act globally? What is
Yes,
that? Yeah,
definitely,
right. Yeah.
definitely. And with the Maryland Women's Heritage Center, I have seen the importance of collecting history. It's not just for the museums to do this, it's for each of us to help collect that history and have it in a safe place that other people have access to it. I think the kinds of things you have at this center are the meat of what young children need to grow strong and be able to
Examples
become
of-
the leaders that others have been before them. And you can express leadership in many ways. I think also the last thing that we need to remember is that the people on whose shoulders we have advanced are to be there as inspiration, but also for us to share with the young people how they can access those people. Having mentors is a great step forward, because you need to check with other people. Do you think I could
Feedback,
be
their wisdom,
giving that feedback that is, hey, why don't you try this other avenue? And I find that with the Congressional Hispanic Caucus interns with whom I participate a lot, I get from 12 years back, an intern I had asking, what do you think of my moving from business to a nonprofit?
So you're still their role model.
Oh, yeah.
And still a mentor.
And I think that they appreciate the fact that I never give them the answer. I said, have you looked at the Library of Congress? Have you explored the
sounding
Council
board.
of Foreign Relations? So whatever the idea is that they can do for themselves to advance themselves.
So we've heard a lot of your story. We've heard Carmen's, her story. I'm sure there are many other stories at another time. We hope we get to chat again so we can hear more of her story. Carmen
you so
Delgado
much.
Votaw, thank you so much.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.